Hey guys, it's Kenner and the Murphy guys. This is going to be another installment of Own It, Never Falking, Seen It, and for this video, I figured that since the sequel to this film is in fact coming out, I would review the original film of The Strangers. This, of course, is the 2008 one. And what The Strangers is essentially about is we center on this kind of broken couple, Kristen and James. Basically, they spend one night in this cabin. James is kind of recovering because Kristen didn't accept his marriage proposal, so he's trying to get out of there. But 4 a.m., they're basically... things are getting kind of heavy with them, and they hear this knock at the door, and basically throughout the rest of the film, they are constantly, they begin to realize that they are being invaded by these unknown strangers, and that's really all there is to say. So The Strangers in general, to be honest with you, I did not know really what I was getting myself into with this movie. I have heard many things. Some people have said this is one of the best horror films to come out in recent memory. Some have said it's very generic. Some have said it's terrible. I really did not know how this was really going to turn out. But I figured, hey, it's got a, new release this week. Why don't I just buy it and see how it is and, review for Own It, Falking, Seen It, and... now that I have, I can say The Strangers is good. It's not great. I don't think this is like an amazing movie or anything, but it does do what you want in a horror film for the most part. It is definitely has some significant flaws for sure, but it is better than what I think it could have been, and we're going to get into it right now, starting off with the cast. Now, the cast in general, it is a little bit difficult to talk about considering that most of them are in these masks throughout the film and don't really have much of a character. However, there are two significant actors we can talk about, and first off, we have to talk about Liv Tyler, who for me, I think stole this entire movie. She really did a fantastic job. The character of Kristen, we'll get to a little bit later, but Liv Tyler, with character withstanding, is a really great actress, and I thought she really did add a lot of depth to this role overall, and a lot of pathos especially. When she is very, freaked out, you're very freaked out. When she's kind of frantic, you're very frantic, and I think they did a really good job with that overall. We don't really know why these guests are coming into her house, and who these intruders are and what their motive is, but she really does do a great job. You can tell that she really doesn't know what to do. She's kind of running out of options. One scene on a radio in particular really did stick out to me, where she's kind of helpless and she wants to get help, as she wants to get some sort of aid as soon as possible. I thought she really did an incredible job in that scene. She really did stick out in this film for sure. I thought she really did an incredible job taking, like I said, what is for the most part a flat character and really did give her a few more layers, and I was definitely impressed by that for sure. And then the rest of the cast, I can't really say too much about. Scott Speedman, for what he does have, I did think he did a good job. They do a good, they get us introduced to his character pretty well. I thought he was good here. And then whoever played the Strangers, there's not really too much to say about them because they don't really have a lot of dialogue, and most of the film is just them, like, walking around and creeping in on them and doing all these crazy things. But they all, I thought, did a pretty solid job. Easily the best one being whoever played the blonde girl, I'm pretty sure was Gemma Ward. She did a good job for the most part. But that's really all there is to say about the cast for the most part. And like I said, what I don't say about the cast, I do have quite a lot to say about the directing and the writing, because I'll say it right off the bat, this movie is not really about the characters. It is much more about the atmosphere, and that is easily one of the best things about this film. Bryan Bertino did, I think, a fantastic job with crafting the tone here, because this is a very, it's a very slow film at first. It really is, but it really does develop into something much more terrifying as it goes on. It starts off, it's kind of calm, but there's always this sense of, not dread, but there's always this sense of tension throughout the film. Like, you always know something is coming, and I think Bertino really did that perfectly, particularly in the film's second and third act. The way he really does build the tension there was definitely very impressed with. I thought that it never really got too cheesy, except for one scene at the end, which we will talk about. I didn't think it ever really got too cheesy. It did actually feel kind of realistic for the most part, and I was overall impressed when it came to the tone. I thought that that was definitely well realized. The writing in this film, though, let's talk about it, because I can totally understand, while I did overall enjoy this film, I can totally understand why someone wouldn't. And that is because, from a character perspective, this film is pretty much lacking. I mean, really, all that we know about the characters of Kristen and James is that James wanted to propose to Kristen. She, for some reason, didn't accept his proposal, and he's distraught about it and is trying to, get someone else to come help him out and get him out of the motel and get him out of the cabin. That's it. That's literally all we know about these characters, and there's not really much else given to them. But for me, what's not given in those characters is in fact saved when it comes to the scares, which they are plenty of them here. I thought that the scares, while you've seen them before, are very well crafted throughout this film, and that's because they're not false scares ever. The jump scares, for the most part, are all real, and you really do feel this tension. This is kind of an uncontrollable situation. They don't really have many options here. They can't just stay inside their house because they know there are intruders that are, constantly watching them and could come at them any second. So leaving their house, when you do that, you can be like, all right, I can see why they left their house. They don't really have too many other things they can do. These characters, for the most part, aren't idiots. They actually do make somewhat intelligent decisions, and I did think that was done well, but at the same time, you do get the sense that they're kind of thinking on their feet, and they're not really thinking very clearly. So that as well, I did think worked for the most part here. I was overall impressed when it came to the writing. Like I said, I thought the scares were very well executed for the most part. However, I will say, besides the flat characterization, I did wish that they did give more to these characters overall, because when things are happening to them, sure, there were points in this movie where I definitely did feel very unnerved. I definitely did feel, quite frantic for these characters. I mean, the film really does eventually move at a pretty fast pace. We'll get to them when we get to the editing. But I didn't really feel emotionally connected. There was not a sense where I'm like, oh, please don't die. Like, I really did not care about these characters. It was more Tyler and Speedman's acting that I think elevated my likeness of the characters. If they weren't playing these characters, and it was just, some random guy and some random girl, just some B-list actors, I really don't think this movie would have come off as well as it did. I will definitely say that. Also, my other thing is that while I do think it was actually a pretty cool idea to keep it on The Strangers, we'll talk about then we get to cinematography, because there's actually something really cool I realized. There's never really a motive given for why they're actually doing this. For the most part, it just seems like they're doing this simply because they wanted to, and because they wanted to go after this couple and create all this kind of terror and violence, and we don't really know why. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. There's not really a big reason given, and that did bother me kind of, because sure, like I said, I was creeped out by these intruders, and I definitely did get on the edge of my seat at times, but I never really felt like I understood why they were doing this. I never really felt like they had much of a motive, and it did feel like it was a bit of a cop-out. It seemed like Bertino was much more focused on the atmosphere and not on the characters. And for that reason, I can understand why he didn't try to develop these characters more, but again, it didn't feel like it was as well realized as I think it could have been. However, something I really did like was the cinematography here, which there's some things done in this movie that I think are really cool. Tracking shots and things like that I really did enjoy. But something I don't think a lot of people have talked about this film is the way it's shot. For the most part, while it's not a documentary film, it feels very much like one. Sure, there are parts where we'll cut back and we'll see a flashback, but it is almost completely focused on them. You rarely ever leave their point of view, to the point where we never see the stranger's face. There's a point in the movie where they reveal their face, and we don't actually see it. And I think the reason that Bertino went that direction is because he wanted to present these strangers as less human and more as these sort of omnipresent, figure who is just kind of following them and, doesn't really have, is very unknown and doesn't really have much of a story besides this. And I did think it actually was a really cool decision. It enhanced their creepiness, it enhanced the situation, and you really did feel like you were with them. Scenes where, either Kristen or James are on the verge of, getting hurt, or they're in a very violent situation and they don't really know what to do, you do very much feel like you're right there with them. And I thought that was very well staged in that way. I was definitely impressed when it came to the cinematography. The score, while it's not used a lot, music is actually a pretty big theme in this movie. They have a record player there, and that is used quite a lot. There are many points where they'll play a song that's kind of out of place with the scene, but I thought it worked because obviously they're using this music to drown out what's actually going on, and it's their way to kind of lure in there, and I did think that was overall pretty well done. I also really like the editing to this movie because despite the fact this movie is really short and it clocks in at about under 90 minutes, it really does take its time. A lot of people compare this to a Hitchcockian thriller, and I definitely would say that. The first 20 or 30 minutes is very slow. You don't really know what's going to happen. You don't really know when these intruders are going to get more savage and when they're going to get much more intimidating and violent and when they're really going to start to go after this couple. You just know it's eventually going to happen, and I really did like the way that was presented throughout the film. The other complaint I do have with this film is the way the movie ends. You think it's going to end at one point, and then they kind of try to connect this other thing, because they start off the movie, and you see these characters, and you're like, what really do they have to do with this movie? Then they connect it again at the end, and the way they connect it to me, it just screams sequel bait. And the thing that's perplexing about that is that the sequel that's coming out has nothing to do with this movie, at least that I'm aware of. It has nothing to do with this. The character, whatever ends up happening at the end, they're not set to like reappear or anything like that. So it's just a very strange choice overall. I don't really know why they took it in that direction, but to me, you could have cut that ending out, and I think the movie would have been pretty much exactly the same, and you really didn't need it in the end. Overall, guys, The Strangers, it's solid. It's nothing amazing. It does the bare minimum of what you want in a horror movie. It has some really good scares, albeit pretty forgettable. It does have a really strong performance from Liv Tyler, and actually does, like I said, really does take its time, and does have that atmospheric feel that you want it to have. It's nothing amazing. It's nothing that I could ever see myself really watching again, but I'm glad that I did watch it. I do think that it did offer something a little bit different, and I did overall really enjoy that, and I am going to give The Strangers overall a B-. But over, guys, in my review of The Strangers, let me know what you guys thought of this one overall, left your thoughts, and like I said, don't really know why it's getting a sequel, and I don't really have many hopes for it, but I'm glad I did check out this first one. Are you guys looking forward to the sequel? Let me know. Once again, next week, guys, I will not be doing the thing where I just randomly pick a movie. Tomb Raider, of course, is the big movie coming out next week, so I will be reviewing the first Tomb Raider, not the second one. I feel like it only really makes sense to review the first one, so definitely look forward to that. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.